All's quiet on the Middle Eastern front. Or is it? Headlines will tell us one thing, while other things are quietly brewing and the situation is slowly heating up. TikTok may be a social media platform. For us older folks, though, it is the clock ticking towards noon, the moment of decision. We're like in an old Western, high noon or gunfight at OK Corral, waiting for the final scene to unravel. The United States rejected Iran's latest proposal, describing it as insulting. They may have used another word I'm translating from what I read in the Hebrew media sites. And amid reports that President Trump's patience is running out, the American president said on Monday evening that the U.S. was supposed to strike Iran as early as Tuesday. But he has decided for now to delay the attack. The reason? A request from the Emir of Qatar and the Saudi Crown Prince and the President of the United Arab Emirates, all asking him to delay it. There are some other rumors going around, but that's what we heard officially. The clock is indeed ticking. The siege on the Hormuz Strait and the naval blockade are having an effect, slowly choking Iran, making them desperate, maybe even having them draw their gun first. Tick-tock indeed. As the fragile ceasefire in Iran continues, here in Israel, we're keeping to the arrangement with the United States. They asked us to hold back and restrain ourselves, despite continued violations by Hezbollah in Lebanon, and with Hamas completely ignoring the conditions set upon it back in September. These organizations keep jumping the gun, testing Israel and learning the meaning of FAFO. Over the past week, the IDF eliminated more than 220 Hezbollah terrorist members in Lebanon, an average of more than 30 per day. We increased strikes north of the Litani River, where Hezbollah have been launching mortar and drone attacks against Israel. We even attacked on the outskirts of Beirut this week. In Gaza, Hamas leader Azzedine al-Haddad was killed, while the army continues its slow, methodical takeover of the Gaza Strip. We are now in control of about 60% of Hamas territory, even though the ceasefire agreement allocated Israel only 53% of the area. And what this does is signal a clear shift in the policies of the past. Hamas is being told that for each violation, there is a price to pay. They still believe that Israel will be restrained by the European Union or by international organizations. And why wouldn't they? It's always worked before. But more about that in a minute. In both arenas, Israel is systematically eroding the ceasefire terms that would be unsustainable in the long run, and were imposed upon us temporarily by Washington. And in both arenas, at least for now, there is no unusual American anger. They too understand that the past behavior is no longer possible. Hamas continues to rule in Gaza, but what happened this week shows how much things have really changed. In the past, Israel was cautious in addressing threats or eliminating terrorists because of their ability to fire missiles and endanger Israeli civilians. Those saying today that Hamas is surviving and that killing its leader doesn't matter are ignoring a very important thing. Hamas's latest leader has been eliminated, along with his family, and the organization, which once terrorized Israel with massive rocket attack or threats on the ground invasion, is now unable to fire even a single rocket or send even one terrorist to the front line. They, the Hamas, can only prance around Gaza now with their uniforms and terrorize local Gazans. Hamas has lost tens of thousands of fighters, lost its supply lines, and more than 60% of its territory. In the remaining 40%, its operatives walk around unarmed, fearing immediate aerial targeting, and digging through the ruins that once was their centers of power. As one Israeli commentator put it this week, Hamas is like an ugly cockroach Israel has crushed under its heel. Its legs and antennae are still twitching slowly in the puddle that used to be Hamas. Fine, the bottom line is that they're running out of tunnels and the next stomp will come. Speaking of which, as Israel continued with the elimination of Hamas leaders in Gaza and the systematic deconstruction of terror infrastructure, Islamists and their supporters in the West marked the Nakba this week. They marked the Nakba as if, what exactly? They weren't destroyed in 1948. The Arabs controlled Judea and Samaria and Gaza for 19 years. Why didn't they do anything then? Why didn't they create a state during those years? They speak now of 600,000 refugees. I lately noticed they raised the number to 700,000, both above the recorded 450,000 for 1949. But regardless, the Arab countries expelled 800,000 Jews. Why didn't they use their countries to take the Arab refugees in? Why was there no Jewish refugee issue? Because we took our people in. So it was never about them, never about refugees of Palestine. The only thing that is keeping the Arab-Philistine concept alive is the fact that they couldn't eradicate Israel. The tragedy of the Nakba that they speak of is the fact that they could not destroy the Jews. And contrary to any and every minority in the Middle East, they could not subdue the Jews. All 1 billion of them could not rid themselves of 7 million Jews. Not by force, not through international institutions, not through propaganda, nothing. So now they're riling up the fools in the West. They controlled, as I said, Gaza for 19 years, and then they had Gaza to themselves for the past 20 years. They now mourn this, but they used it to cover the infrastructure that was meant to destroy Israel. Yes, they were able to break through and murder over 1,200 Israelis, but that was all. Now they have this. And if you think they've learned the lesson, look at this. All these demonstrations around the world. Now it's not about rights and compromise in 2 states. Now it's about from the river to the sea. And all those self-proclaimed lovers of peace, here in Israel as well as those around the world, who told us that compromise and recognitions would make them a partner and more reasonable, they were all silent during every violation, making excuses for every act of violence, and overlooked what the Arabs said themselves. And we were expected to take it all in. Suicide bombings, missiles, terrorism. And now you continue to encourage them. Let them understand that they can get away with it while admonishing Israel. This was all the consequence of your conduct. It is the same in Lebanon, where these institutions and European countries who were supposed to keep the peace and who instead allowed the terror groups to operate next to them. All of you are the reasons they thought they can do all these things, which they did, and violate international law, and ended up like this. Because for us here in Israel, it is either this or this. We in Israel did not need the confirmation of the Civil Commission on the October 7th crimes by Hamas against the women and children to know what our Islamist enemies would do to us given the opportunity. The Arabs openly call for the butchering of men, the raping of women, young girls to be turned into sex slaves, and the torturing and sadistic murder of children. Let there be no doubt, this is the fate of every Jew in Israel faces from Islam if we are ever incapable of defending ourselves. Why do I know this? Not because they openly express it at every opportunity and on social media. If you haven't seen or heard them demonstrating their intent all over Europe and the United States in recent days, you haven't been paying attention. I know this because in recent years, this has exactly been the fate of the Yazidi, the Christians, the Kurds, all who lived under Islamic rule in the Middle East. This is exactly the fate of Christians in Africa. None of these groups occupy any territory, and none of them have borders in dispute. None assaulted Islam or Muslims. None of them commit a single one of these many excuses Arab sympathizers use to demonize Israel and blame us for Arab aggression. No one insisted on coexistence, no signs that were saying Yazidi and Arabs are not enemies. None of their Muslim neighbors ran to protect them. No, their only crime was that they were just misfortunate enough to not be able to defend themselves in the Middle East. No nation, no international organizations, and none of the hundreds of human rights groups who pay out millions of dollars to activists stepped in to help any of them or cease the vicious annihilation of these minorities. Other minorities, the Baha'i, the Zoroastrians, the Copts, are also persecuted and abused and denied basic rights under Islamic regimes. They too are guilty of nothing other than not being Muslim. All those in the media, all the so-called experts, all the pathetic Asa Jews who joined the vilification of Israel, twisting facts and realities to conveniently justify their participation in systematic demonization of the country that is the refuge to a people persecuted for generations. All do so while ignoring the ugly realities, and by doing so feeding the murderous beast that is responsible for all the violence perpetrated against helpless peoples in the Middle East. The virtue-signaling posers on the social media, their minds poisoned by years of progressive indoctrination, never spoke up, never mentioned, never came to the defense of any of the most innocent of these victims, the nameless children of the Yazidis, the Christians, and the Kurds, or the Persians for that matter. No one rioted, no one protested, no one came to their defense. Their lives did not matter. If it was about resistance or colonialism, why did Black September happen in Jordan? Why did the Lebanon Civil War happen? Why did they expel Jews from Arab countries? Why did they not create a state when they could have between 1948 and 1967? So, excuse us if we do not get too excited by your self-righteous indignation. We will continue to do everything we can to hold off and, if needed, to kill those seeking to annihilate us and murder our families. We will handle your whiny scorn. The alternative is not an option. The State of Israel was created precisely so Jews would never again be helpless victims. So you can zayo us as much as you want. You can virtue signal, spew hate, puke indignation, cheer at our pain, encourage these vile invaders of your countries. But the choice for us is simple. Our lives, the lives of our children, it is what matters. And you can go shove your warped, sick values. You can go f*** yourselves. And while they're keeping you focused on us, with whatever excuse they find this or that week, they're slowly invading you. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The clock is not only ticking away here, it is also ticking away in your area. Islamists and the Muslim Brotherhood are not in the West to assimilate. They are there to conquer, using the freedoms of the West, the principles and the values to advance their own goal and their own values. Freedom of religion is an important element of Western culture. But while we're applying our principles, they're abusing it to infiltrate their own. Religious presence for them is not a celebration of one's beliefs, but a means to symbolize superiority. Islamists taking to prayer in your streets is not the exercise of religious freedom as we see it. They don't do it in their own countries, only where they need to show dominance. And yes, there are public religious displays in the West. I, for one, love the Christmas manger scenes, the Christmas trees, even choirs singing during the holiday season. I loved the Easter Bunny and the egg hunts. I'm not Christian. It was Christians celebrating, not trying to impose anything on anyone. But prayer in public spaces for Islamists, in kufr, non-believers' areas, is defiance. Just as they build mosques over Christian and Jewish sites. They scream about globalizing the Intifada. Then they're doing it against defenseless Jews. And few speak up or speak out about it because Jewish citizens in your countries are somehow responsible for what we in Israel are doing. It is the same here. When you normalize evil, when you justify it, when you apply rules and laws selectively, you make it acceptable. So don't be surprised when incidents happen like in San Diego this week. When you make excuses for violence or for singling out of individuals for perceived outrage, you make it acceptable. You want to globalize a particular violence? Well, other people have their preferred adaptation that they feel needs to be globalized as well. Looking now at the day after in Gaza, one of the ideas being pushed by the EU and left-wing elements in Israel is having the Palestinian Authority take over. Dr. Ariel Admoni of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security and Sagiv Steinberg of the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs addressed this issue in an article published this week in the Israeli newspaper Ma'ariv. They argue that Qatar does not view the Palestinian Authority as a moderate alternative to Hamas, but rather as a mechanism that could one day serve as a legitimate political cover for the Muslim Brotherhood rule. According to the article, over the past decade, Doha has transferred more than $1 billion to the Palestinian Authority. They invested in education systems and infrastructure and media while simultaneously promoting anti-Semitic content and pro-Hamas narratives through institutions such as Al Jazeera and UNRWA. The authors warned that international plans to hand control of Gaza to a reformed Palestinian Authority, a so-called Reformed Palestinian Authority, ignore the fact that elements within Fatah and the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades, they themselves took part in the October 7th attack, and they operate in coordination with Hamas. Qatar does not support the PA because it is moderate, the article states, but because it can serve as a legitimate wrapper for Muslim Brotherhood movement. They further argue that without dismantling the mechanisms of incitement, economic dependency, and Qatari influence, Hamas could easily return under a different name and with a new political facade. As for the Israeli side, Dr. Kobi Michael, who I've interviewed here before and shared articles of his, had an interesting take on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's vision for the future. In an article he published with the Israeli Center for Grand Strategy, Dr. Michael presents the strength and the challenges of Prime Minister Netanyahu's advancing a strategic conception tailored to the major transformation that is happening. The world is no longer shaped by two superpowers. Power is dispersing, and Netanyahu is trying to build an Israeli strategy that fits this new reality. Dr. Michael begins with a quote from the statement by Netanyahu at the cabinet meeting on February 22, 2026, in which he said the following: "In the vision I see before me, we will create an entire system, essentially a hexagon of alliances, around or within the Middle East. This includes India, Arab states, African states, Mediterranean states such as Greece and Cyprus, and states in Asia that I will not specify at the moment." This hexagon vision, according to Dr. Michael, is Israel's attempt to turn global multipolarity into a strategic asset. Instead of Israel being a small state reacting to events, the idea is to position Israel as a hub, the sixth axis connecting 5 major regional spheres. More than just diplomacy, it's an attempt to build a networked regional architecture security coordination, with infrastructure links, economic corridors, and technological partnerships all tied together with Israel at the center. According to Michael, this vision emerges directly from the shock of October 7th and the multi-front war that followed. Netanyahu sees the war as both a trauma and an opportunity. Iran's regional axis has been weakened. Arab states are exposed and dependent on external security. And Israel has demonstrated both the military and technological dominance. In that vacuum, he believes Israel can help shape a new regional order. But the vision faces enormous challenges. First, it is still mostly rhetoric. There are no binding institutions, no financing mechanisms, no operational frameworks. Without real infrastructure and real commitments, it remains a vision. Second, the Palestinian issue is the landmine under the entire project. No Arab state will fully join a regional architecture that runs through disputed territory without a political horizon. Third, the United States, personal ties with Trump, don't erase the structural tension. Washington wants ceasefires and stability. Israel wants active deterrence and freedom of action. American support is essential, but American interests don't always align with Israel's. Fourth, there's India. It's a rising power, but it also maintains deep ties with Iran and Russia. It won't just join an anti-Iranian front. Its participation will always be limited by its own strategic autonomy. Fifth, the architecture lacks a clear center of gravity. Unlike NATO, there is no hegemon anchoring the system. It is a flexible network which works in quiet times, but historically collapses under crises. Still, Michael argues the innovation here is real, using connectivity, infrastructure, and technology, not just military alliances, as the glue for regional stability. Projects like the IMEC, the India-Middle East-Europe Corridor, and joint energy and digital infrastructure with Greece and Cyprus give the vision a physical backbone. The bottom line is this: Netanyahu's hexagon vision is ambitious, creative, and strategically coherent, but still abstract, fragile, and full of unresolved contradictions. I know Kobi very well. We both attended the same high school in our hometown of Ashkelon, and we were friends back then. Years later, I had the privilege of working closely with him as we were both senior members of the Prime Minister's office in Israel. He is one of the smartest people I have ever met. And more than anything, I believe this article of his best describes the uniqueness of Netanyahu in the Israeli political landscape, and I would even perhaps say in the Western political landscape. Netanyahu is a man with a clear vision for our country. And by this, you should understand why so many Israelis, myself included, support Netanyahu. And we are slowly moving into an election year. Many politicians are looking to take over. Besides his impeccable handling of the war since October 7th, Netanyahu had a vision for the future of Israel that many politicians in Israel lack, and is, in my eyes, vital for Israel to pursue in the coming years. Finally, as we head into the Shavuot holiday, Chag Matan Torah, the celebration of receiving the Torah and the Ten Commandments, a few points of relevance for our times. Shavuot is the only holiday in the Jewish calendar that has no date written in the Torah. It only commands us to count 49 days from the second day of Passover, celebrating Shavuot on the 50th day. Pesach, Sukkot, Rosh Hashanah, they all have specific dates. But for the moment we receive the Torah, our defining moment, there is no number on the calendar. Because as Jewish scholars tell us, Matan Torah wasn't a moment in time. It was a condition of the heart. The Torah was given when we were ready to receive it, when we stood together, Ke'ish echad belev echad, with one heart, one purpose, one destiny. Not perfect, not fully healed, but united enough to hear something greater than ourselves. The message then, as it is today, we're living through a moment where the world is shifting under our feet. Old powers are fading, new powers rising, alliances reshaping, threats mutating. And inside of all that noise, Israel and the Jewish people are being asked the same question we were asked at Mount Sinai. Are we ready to receive what comes next? Are we standing together or standing apart? Because the Torah wasn't given to individuals. It wasn't offered to tribes separately. It was given to a people who chose to stand side by side even when they didn't agree on everything. There is also reason that we read the book of Ruth on this holiday. Like many Christian supporters of Israel, Ruth wasn't born into this story. She chose it. In a moment of deep grief, isolation, and uncertainty, she looked at Naomi and chose community over comfort. Her declaration, "Where you go, I will go," is the ultimate example of what the event on the Mount Sinai asks of all humans. It is the reminder that the Jewish destiny isn't just an inheritance. It is a conscious decision to tie your fate to the fate of a people, your people. And do you choose the word of God and his commandments? And that's the challenge of our generation. We don't need to be identical. We don't need to erase our differences. But we do need to remember that our story only moves forward when we move forward together. Shavuot is about asking whether we can recreate that moment now in a country still fighting, still grieving, still rebuilding, still arguing, but still here. Still choosing life, still choosing each other, still choosing to carry a mission that started long before any of us were born. So as we enter the Shavuot holiday, maybe the blessing is this. May we be worthy of receiving the Torah again, not because it is handed to us, but because we show up for one another, because we open our hearts, because we remember that our strength has never come from power alone, but from purpose. And may this Shavuot bring clarity, unity, and the quiet courage to keep walking even through the desert toward the future we were meant to build. Chag Shavuot Sameach. I'm Daniel Sivan. Join me again next week on Straight Up from the JNS TV studios here in Jerusalem, Israel.